Hey, welcome to Coffee with Ronnie. Look, I have my cup. Life is good. It's busy. As you know, I'm doing my Cup of Clarity program, which is coming along swimmingly. I'll tell you, this is turning out to be a cool thing. It's turning out to be a cool thing. I thank anyone who has, everyone who has supported me in this and has booked an appointment. They're going along well. I'm happy. I hope my clients are happy, because we always hope our clients are happy that we're doing the job that they are looking for. Speaking of the Midwest, was I? Anyway, back to my topic at hand. So if you've spent anywhere in the Midwest, or specifically Minnesota, you know there are certain things that people say regionally that appear to be conversational, but actually are kind of in the insult category. So let me go through a few of those. If you happen to be in Minnesota and someone says the words to you, well, that's different. And they might say it in regard to, like, say, your new haircut, your political views, the taco dip you just put in the middle of the table. They might say, well, that's different. And to some people that might sound like, oh, well, yeah, that's interesting. Let's talk about that. In Minnesota, that means that is not a good thing. It means either it's ugly, you're wrong, or that dip is too spicy. But they're not going to come out and say, that dip is too spicy. They'll say, well, that's different, meaning not what we are used to. So you have to learn to interpret these things and figure out what they're actually saying to you. And in Minnesota, this is called, you will hear this, Minnesota nice, which I've always said is sort of Minnesota passive aggressive. They're just too nice to say that dip is horrible or your haircut is just completely wrong for you. They'll just say, well, that's different. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. You just learn to roll with it. The other thing that people will say to you when you have an opinion, have a conversation, they will say to you, well, you're not from here, are you? Now, when someone says, you're not from here, are you? That is interpreted to mean, not to mean, oh, I'd love to know more about where you came from and what your traditions are. That means, again, you're wrong. More than likely, you're wrong. Be quiet. Learn our ways. That is what you're not from here means to you. The other thing that people will say, and I know they don't just say this in Minnesota, but that's where I spent my formative adult years, so I heard this there. When they'll say about someone, not to their face, it's always, this is the Minnesota passive aggressive part. Sounds like a compliment, but not. And this is the, well, he's got a lot of book learning. And book learning means he studied something or she studied something. They know about it by the book, but not by the actual experience. Now, this one, like many things that we say, might sound like a flip comment, or it might sound like code for something else, but sometimes there's a lot of truth to something. And when they say they have book learning, that's usually followed by, but he can find his way out of a paper sack kind of thing. Maybe that's an Ohio thing. That's the other part. I learned all these. And when you have a truck driving father, you learn all these kinds of euphemisms. They just speak in code. Truck drivers speak in code. You have to learn how to figure it out. So a lot of these things have a lot of truth in them. And when people say he has book learning, that means that, yeah, you understand it intellectually, but you don't understand something by living it, by doing it, by being in the thing that it is. Now, often this is like about farming or something, but we're going to talk in terms of our art business. When an artist goes from that place of, I love to do art, I do art, now I want to sell art, there is a process that we all have gone through or are going through right now. And that is the book learning portion of how this business works. And the book learning portion looks like reading blogs, reading books, maybe hiring a coach, taking courses, reading everything that you can get your hands on, getting into 500 different Facebook groups, I don't think there's 500, and looking for the rules, looking for the framework of what does this business look like, and looking for the rules so they don't break them. So you dive into the book learning part of the business. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. That's really important. The book learning is important, but it's not that complicated, and you don't have to spend all your time in the book learning system in order to get your work out in front of people that can do something about it. Because once you know the business, you know it. You don't have to continue to learn it. You just have to learn the framework and go, okay, I've got the basic idea of how this is going to work. And then you can go to the, how does this apply to me? The business part isn't going to change all that much. Business is very simple. Very simple. Of course, there's details and you don't want to get ripped off and blah, blah, blah. There's always people to help you with that. But it's really simple. And here's the basic business. Do stuff, show stuff, sell stuff. That's it. That's all you have to do. And when you understand, like, okay, well, if you're going to license your work, this is basically how that works. Or if you're going to sell your artwork outright or be in a gallery, this is basically how that works. You don't have to know all of it, and you can never know all of it until you experience it. But here's the other observation that I've had when people go into that deep dive and sort of stay in that learning space. I just have to learn more. I have to figure this out. I have to know every single rule, every single way that people do things. How did she do it? How did he do it? How did they do it? All of that. When you're living in that, here's what happens. It starts to suck the life out of your artwork. It just squeezes every nuance and interesting thing that you started out with because you're trying so hard to not break the rules and trying so hard to conform to the ideas that you believe are true out in this business. So what happens is people start to think, well, now I have to make things marketable. Now I have to make things licensable because those are the rules. That's what everybody told me, including me, where I'm like, this is the framework, kids. This is basically how it works. But I hope that I have said in the realm of all of this, in the classes that I teach, and in my book, to say this is the framework. Now put your own spin on it. Bring your interesting work to this world, and don't worry so much about the business side. So if you think about it as, okay, I learned all this stuff, so I'm just gonna, okay, I'm not gonna, you don't unlearn it. It just is there. It's a thing. It's not you don't have to put a bunch of emotions on top of it. The emotions need to go into the artwork, because that's how we get cool and weird and interesting and quirky work out in the world, because you have trusted your own gut as far as your work goes, and you haven't milked it down into this, but it has to be marketable. Because whenever, I mean, we're sort of hyper aware of what's going on out in the market and who's selling what and what does the new look like in Target for Christmas or whatever that is. And it's always a little bit weird, but we're like, oh, well, that's cool. I haven't seen that before. And that's more likely because somebody didn't dumb their work down. So they didn't decide that they had to look like the current trend or the current style of art, that they brought something new, and the people that understand new stuff totally recognize it because of its authenticity, because of its joy, because of its heart, because you haven't squeezed the life out of it by trying to make it marketable or trying to make it fit this business model and to follow all those rules that you think you need to follow. What do you think of that? Okay, I'm just cracking myself up today because I have been thinking about this a lot. And part of it is as a result of some of the calls that I've had in the last couple of weeks with clients, is just saying, no, you don't have to do that. Look at this work of yours. Look how cool this is. And don't try to put yourself in a box that doesn't fit you because you think you're supposed to. That's how you end up with dull and predictable and pedestrian artwork, because you haven't brought that unique voice and viewpoint to the world. So yeah, get your book learning over here. I get this, I understand this, but then you bring your gut and your common sense and your meeting the right kinds of people that understand you. That's the difference. That's the part that you can't learn in a book. And when you're always trying to follow rules, those things go away. They just get buried under the this giant tome of information that you think you need to be following at all times, as if there's some sort of art marketing police out there that are going to tell you to do it differently. Yeah, you can always learn stuff, and you can always have someone else's perspective to come in and go, hey, this is really cool over here. What can we do with this? All of that is always available to you. Like I said, you can't unlearn that stuff. It's basic business. So I want you to have your voice, your vision, your heart-centered work that comes out to the world, because that is, we're selling to human beings. We're selling to people. We're not selling to a business. We're selling to people that will say, I understand that, I get that, or oh my gosh, that is hilarious, or you've just moved me in some way, or yeah, I'm mad about that too. Let's do something about that. All of those things, businesses, they are human beings. They're human beings. And when we try to make them a widget or the structure, that's when we suck the life out of it, is basically what we do. And just remember, it just doesn't change that much. It just, the things that we wrote, economic situations change. People's view on the world changes. Right now, we feel a little wobbly, and that is just normal. But sometimes it's when the world feels a little wobbly is when they really need the artists. People really need the artists to step up and say, I'm going to bring more beauty to the world. I'm going to bring more humor to the world. I'm going to bring more of my heart-centered work to the world to help heal some stuff that may need to be healed. And that's our job. That's our job. I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, this is our rallying cry. This is the rallying cry. But I so want you to bring that best work, and don't worry about whether it's, should I be doing succulents? Should I be doing llamas? Don't worry about it. Do it if you want. Don't if you want. Just bring your heart and bring that message that you have, your unique, special, quirky, weirdo self to the world. And that's what people are looking for, particularly now. So I know I sound very passionate about this because I am. That's what is driving my own train right now, is like, what do I bring